Hey everybody, welcome back to Midweek with the Maker. A little different perspective for you today. I'm going to try and actually where I had the camera set up last week, I actually need to use the tool for the next step in the axe process, so got to shift it around a little bit. I got the fire going in the background here. Actually, I had a really nice and roaring fire, and the flue was all warmed up, so it was drawing really well. Then I went and started organizing my grinding belts, and the fire died on me. So it's kind of coming back. And actually, my other heater just kicked on, so hopefully turn that off. If you're here for Midweek with a Maker, I really appreciate that. It's something I'm trying to kick off, but you're also coming to it a little bit late. If you haven't watched last week's Midweek with a Maker, it's available at Umbrella Forge Facebook page, so you can see just some of the tinkering that I did there. I got a little bit of feedback. More of it was revolving around the axe that I was working on. So today is continuing that. There was one step that was added to my YouTube channel, Umbrella Forge on YouTube, Umbrella Forge Blacksmith. If you look that up, or Midweek with the Maker, check that out. Give me a follow. Maybe I'll start doing the live stream on YouTube rather than Instagram, or try and find. I'm learning as I'm going, so if there's a program that can help me to do both at the same time, that might be where I'm heading. But for today, for the next little bit, we're going to be working on this here axe. It's been really fun. I thought I was going to have to scrap it because the eye was slightly off center. By the time I finished forging it out through the first iteration and second iteration of Midweek with the Maker, I got it lined up to where it's really within acceptable parameters. So I really like this. I like the shape for this little user. One of the things that we look at as an axe maker, especially the way that I make axes, which is a forge welded bit into a mild steel body. It's a bit more of an antiquated style, but I think it builds a better axe. I love having that high carbon bit and the mild steel acting as a shock absorber. So depending on the type of wood that you're cutting into, it can actually squeeze on a micro level. This isn't a huge thing. We'll squeeze a little bit and then shoot it back out as you're cutting in and crossing those fibers of the wood. At the end of the day, I'm a blacksmith. I love what I do, and I think a forge welded bit axe is everything that a blacksmith needs to know how to do, all in one tool. Forge welding, slitting and drifting, tapering, heat treating. We're going to be putting a handle on this thing as well, so all of that comes into this one tool that's, about the size of my hand. It controls everything. It has all of these essential elements for forging in one tool. I absolutely love that. So I've been infatuated with axes since I was in 3rd grade, or if you're from Canada, grade 3. I remember specifically, in fact, my mom kept it and she recently gave it to me. I wrote a story about making axes in the 3rd grade. I didn't think it was something that I could actually do for a living, and yet here I am, and all of you watching are helping me out with that, so thank you so much. Anyway, off of that, I'm glad to see the fire has come back to life. One of the things that I like to do in testing my axe in my welds, let me play with the fire a little bit. A lot of 21st century makers, they start off not with a coal forge, they start off with a gas forge, which I'm pointing here, but it's slightly off screen. Gas forge. Here. And the reason people start with the gas forge is because it's easy. You light the gas and it goes and poosh, you're off and running. I have one, obviously. I use it for some processes, some pattern welding processes I'll use for this, or if I got a lot of production that I'm doing. In fact, if you're local to where I'm at, I'm going to River Edge Nature Center recently, or this weekend, and I brand wood cookies. I call them wood cookies, little cut-offs. They got a maple leaf because it's maple sugar season. When I do that, I use the gas forge because I turn it on. I don't worry about burning the steel. The temperature tops out at a certain temperature through an atmospheric delivery system that I have here. So I love it for that purpose. But when I'm doing custom work, when I'm doing something that I really love, something that I really care about, I'm going to use the coal because I have a more intimate relationship with it. I get to play with the fire. I'm constantly moving. There's a cycle of moving from coal to coke to ash. There's clinker that is involved. It's locations in the fire. I know exactly where the reducing layer, the oxidizing layer is. So I love the coal for that purpose. So this axe was forge welded in the coal fire right over here. So I took mild steel and high carbon steel, which have different melting temperatures, and I fused them together. This is how axes have been made for thousands of years. But one thing that we want to check is to make sure that it's a good weld. We have a couple different ways that we check those. First of all, we just look at the perimeter of where the weld line is. Now this is a slit and drift, so I punched a hole so there's really no center line that goes all the way through. So any line that we're going to see in here would be somewhere where it's not really welded. And if we look at the top, it's really welded. We look at the edge, it's really welded, so things are looking really good. When we come down here towards the bottom of the beard, there is not in the first half inch or 3/4 of an inch, there's nothing going on. Then we see this little line that I can't even get my fingernail into, which in some painting industries, still your fingernail is considered a legitimate tool of measurement. If your fingernail can catch something, then it's a problem. So I do have a little bit of a seam back here that is visible. That doesn't mean that everything is lost. One of the beautiful things about the way that I weld my axes is I open up the body and then insert the high carbon bit like this, and then it welds around. So now as this gets punched into whatever material, the high carbon is actually being forced into a crotch of the mild steel. So it's actually being, if you will, seated better. It's actually makes it way less likely to fail because it's an integral to it, or internal, excuse me. Some earlier practices would be a taco style, as it's called now, or a wraparound, where the mild steel will go in the middle and the high carbon's on the outside. We see that in some old style axes that are etched, soaked in vinegar or something like that. And you'll see a really dark edge or dark part of material out here, and then a light piece of metal in here. Fire's still alive, it's just not flaming. And that tells you likely it's a wrap, which I don't like, because if you wrap, it's really fine because you're going to get good high carbon steel all the way around, whatever. But as it sharpens, you could actually go past it rather quickly and end up with mild steel on your edge. Mild steel axes or wrought iron axes are actually what shaped the world. So this idea of it has to be the hardest axe or the sharpest axe or anything like that, get over yourself. In fact, in the settling of the Americas, almost all of the axes that were shipped over historically were actually iron axes and not steel axes. They were sent over because it was cheaper to send iron than it was to send steel. And the blacksmiths in the Americas would then, for the well-paying customers, they would actually forge weld steel onto the edge. Actually, just a little bit of steel would go in. See, this is the bit. They would forge a bit of steel onto the edge to help it a little bit better, but not everybody could afford that. So a lot of trees were felled, especially in the New England area, the eastern seaboard, were felled by simply iron axes. Having your high carbon steel put in, that was a later development. Certainly never in period of the 18th century would you see an entire steel axe. In fact, the entire steel axe is something we see that shows up in the 20th century, and entirely predating that is iron, maybe a steel bit, obviously going even back to stone axes. So there's the history that you didn't expect and weren't caring about when you decided to watch Midweek with the Maker. You want to see me make something. So we'll get to that. I've got, the taco and reverse taco. Well, thanks. I appreciate recognizing that. I guess you could call it a reverse taco. I call it a laminate weld. In fact, that I can get started on that. Laminations or different layers of welding. That is my preferred style of taco. I don't like calling it taco. I love tacos, as you can see, but I think it's just more descriptive. I have some archaeological books from the 600s from Scandinavia where we see laminated or wraparound folding, forge welding techniques where it's high carbon steel on the inside and wrought iron, bog iron to be very specific, on the outside. It preserves the amount of steel. It helps it to be a better cutting. And archaeologists have called it laminate. I think we go back to our sources to antiquity, and it's going to give us the proper language to use for this. So, but taco, reverse taco, that's very common now in today's world. So I'm not upset with anybody who uses it. I just prefer laminate style. Tangent. Anyway, Midweek with a Maker. Easier for the layman to visualize. Yeah, absolutely. It is easier to visualize that. At my heart, I love teaching. So I like grabbing the obtuse or the esoteric stuff and try and bringing it to people. So forgive me for that. Anyway, getting back to this specific little user X, not really typological, intentionally so. This was just pulled out of scrap bin. I'm going to use it. I'm going to see what I can do with it, which is a great way to test yourself as a maker. If it's something, every process can go through an ugly duckling phase. So sometimes try and save something, see if you can do it. Sometimes it's not worth the effort, but the knowledge that you're going to gain is absolutely worth it. So I'm going to turn my blower on real quick. My favorite way to test if the weld is good, first of all, I look at the edges to see if the seams are all covered. And like I said, I got that little one here. Sometimes even just the orientation of the striations from the grinder can cause you to see a line that actually isn't there. It just picks up a little schmutz. That's a technical term too. And presents a line. That's not necessarily meaning that your piece has failed. For me, my favorite thing to do involves a string, and then grab another piece of metal. Doesn't have to be steel, but if it makes you feel better, you can get steel. Here, I'm assuming you can hear the ringing there. The fact that it's ringing makes me really happy. That tells me that there is a solid piece here. If you got a piece that's got a crack in it, it's not gonna ring. It's gonna clunk. It's gonna thump, and it'll die very quickly. No, it's done. It's done ringing now. But the longer that it rings is helping you to understand that it's a solid piece. That's true when you come to testing anvils. Some old timers will say you gotta tap it and see if the anvil rings, and that lets you know that it's a good anvil. And that's only partly true. Old style anvils are made with a high carbon piece forge welded onto a wrought iron body, and when it rings, it means it's connected. If it doesn't ring, that means that there's a crack somewhere or possibly an inclusion. And that's the first sign that there's a problem. The ringing doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. Just like with the axe, it doesn't mean that it's good. It sets my heart at ease that I've got something that's a lot closer to good than what I really would have thought. I really think the only way to tell that the axe is fully good is about 20 years after you're done using it. Of course, then during its lifetime, it's never failed you. That's what I mean by that. Having said that, I put axes out that I absolutely love. I think they're going to be fine. I'd love to do the ring test. I don't ring test all of them. It's just if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go ring test them and make them go. So, again, you're here, Midweek with a Maker. We're talking about axes. I've just wasted a whole bunch of time talking about the process. I wouldn't say wasted. It was enjoyable time for me, hopefully for you as well. I did a Midweek with a Maker. I released a video on YouTube under Umbrella Forge. Please go watch that one, like, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. Once I get 50 followers, then I can open up to doing live stream and hopefully live streaming here and there at the same time. But I cleaned up the profile of the axe. If you look at Midweek with the Maker from last week, it doesn't look like this. It's got a little chunkier, got a little more issues. But every blade ends up on the grinder at some point, even axes. I just did a little extra profile grinding on this guy to get to where we are. So you can see that process on my YouTube video. So right now what I need to do is open up the eye a little bit more, which is going to be running a series of drifts, or should be a series of drifts. I've got two. That's all I'm going to do because the series happened previously. Because it's really close to shape right now. In fact, that's a problem I was clean. There it is. This is the drift, the next drift that's got to go through here. This is, I believe this drift right here is made out of S7. And it's about the size of most commercially available size for, well, hey, Dark Moon, thanks for visiting. Thanks. I don't think it's a waste either. I just stream of consciousness talking. So yeah, I'm going to get to hammering in a little bit here. So this is a drift. It helps shape the eye. It's the size of most commercially available, but you can see it doesn't go quite all the way through. So I want to open this eye up just a little bit more so that it can receive the commercially available axe soon, easily. I say commercially available axe very purposefully because with axes, the handle is the expendable part of the axe. So I'm proud of my work. I believe in my work, and I will, if it's got my Umbrella Forge mark on it, I'm going to stand behind it. If the wood breaks, that's not on me. So you, as a user, should be able to replace the handle on your axe as you see fit. So you don't want to call me to make you a new axe handle, and you don't want to spend a day making a new axe handle. It's still going to take you a little bit of time to shape it properly, but if you can go down to the store, shape it a little bit, and then get back to work, everybody's happy with that. So that's why I have them close to a commercially available axe handle size. So before I do this, I want to share the next step of trying to decide on a proper handle. This size is very usable, but it's not really, I wouldn't call it like a farm axe or heavy timber axe. So that puts us into different handle sizes. So I've got two right here. This one is commonly called a boy's axe size, and this would be considered a hatchet. Or hatchet handle. For me, I don't really draw that big of a distinction between an axe and a hatchet. Yes, an axe is technically bigger, but the amount of work that I put into them, if they're forge welded bit, slit and drift, or even wrap construction, is going to be about the same. So they're all axes to me. So the way I go through is I kind of hold them up and say, is that a good look? Like this doesn't look that bad to me. It doesn't look that out of proportion. The head's small, the handle's small. That looks really good. This starts to look a little bit, to me, actually better. Just because of the size of the bit. Most axes, I dare you, go out and measure them, are around 4 inches, 4 to 6 inches we see on this bit size. So they're not absurdly large until you get into goose wings and all that other really specialized axes. So this is the handle that I've decided that I really like. So this is the one we're going to be putting the axe onto this one. I try and just take an idea now where I order these handles from. They have no finish on them and the eyes are slightly oversized. So I try and line them up just to see how is it fitting. And I've probably got maybe a quarter of an inch clearance front to back. The sides, you can see some light coming through there on the sides of the eye. Those are just fine because once you put a wedge in there, it's going to be great. So I'm really happy with this. This is with this the hatchet handle, this eye form is going to work just fine. So now it's been about 20 minutes of me chattering at you. The fire is still alive. I'm going to put this in the fire. We're going to run this drift through at least once from each side, and I'm going to be doing that over by the swedge block over there to open it up to where I think it's about right. We're going to put my mark in it, and then I think we're actually going to be able to quench this blade today. Even though it's nice and thick, it's protected on the outside by that mild steel, but it'll still harden. We'll still be able to do that and make or at least see if this axe survives, because that's always the scariest point when you have a forge weld with high carbon and mild steel on the side. In the quench, the weld can decide it's not happy and give up. That's happened to me twice in my career. So I don't think it's going to happen here, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the fire here. This isn't really everything in forging ends up becoming an opinion contest. Okay, there's a less family-friendly way of saying that, but what I like to do is actually put the axe with the eye up, and it acts like a chimney, so it actually starts to get heat. Obviously, it's going to be at the hottest at the bottom, but I feel instead of heating one side and then the other, letting it draw up through there is going to be ideal. Show you a couple other things here. So the swedge block that we're going to be using is right here. And likely end up over one of these larger holes, probably this guy right here, just because it's reachable. I like these slots, but this size just doesn't quite fit in there. So that'll be what we come over to open up that hole just a little bit more. The axe already started to sink down. You can see we're heating up really well there. The high carbon bit is 5160, so we're going to be quenching in my oil here. It's in a steel drum. I'll move that out when the time is appropriate. And then hot shot oven. Hot shot oven, that's what we're going to use for the tempering. So we're going to quench out of the fire, out of the forge, but then when it comes to tempering, that is going to be controlled by the wonderful Hot Shot Ovens company. Hot Shot Ovens I 100% recommend. They are great people to work with, and let's make sure we can see over there. That's who I would recommend that you guys get your heat treating ovens from. Safety glasses too. Give them a call. Check out the website, Hot Shot Ovens Kilns. They're my friends. They're my friends. Good people. A little bit of coffee here right before we swing. When running a drift, I know you can't see me right now, but when you're running a drift through, you want to be careful about making sure that your temperature is about the same on both sides, so that it stretches evenly. If you need to, oh, there it is. I came from the top here. Oh, that makes me happy. Right there. If you need to open it up just a little bit, or if you got one side that's a little bit longer than the other, or thicker, you can, in a coal forge, you can heat one side a little bit hotter than the other, and then you can control the stretch. Again, which is another reason why coal is way superior to gas forges. And I will argue that with anybody, but there we go. There's that drift run through, nice and easy. You also notice, it wasn't absurdly loud. Another benefit of coal over gas. And we're all happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my touch mark in here because I'm happy. Now, instead of doing my big one, I kind of want to leave this rough forged just to showcase, and anybody who's been watching Midweek with a Maker will be able to see some of the hammer marks, which gives it kind of a cool story. So I'm going to use my smaller touch mark. We're going to heat it back up, and we're going to do that right here at the anvil. So we'll try and get it so that the fire is available. I spend a lot of time. I've got my headphones on here. I'm hoping I get notified when there are comments, so if you feel like commenting, please do. One of the things that I enjoy about forging is the requirement of me to be present. At any point, things can go wrong. So I'm listening, I'm looking, I'm feeling, obviously. I'm feeling to see if the drift is still too hot. I'm smelling a lot too. I find that this engages all of my senses. But what I'm listening to, besides the background, that's why I love the open ear headphones, so I can hear the hum of the shop as well. But I'm listening to stuff that kind of keeps me calm. There's an excellent book out there called Shop Class as Soulcraft. I can't remember the name of the author right now. But it blends working with your hands and philosophy. And I think it's really cool because you, as you set out to be a maker, craftsperson of whatever, your philosophy is going to dictate a lot of things. So if your philosophy is simply to be a business, which is fine, you're going to approach things with probably a little bit more tolerance than somebody who's approaching their craft out of passion, out of desire to create something beautiful. Not saying that people who want to run a business purely don't want to make something beautiful. I'm sure they do, but maybe the business itself is beautiful rather than the product is beautiful. Anyway, it's a great read. Shop Class is Soulcraft. Highly recommend. Give that a read because philosophy is important. And in case you're wondering, yes, I am a big nerd. My wife reminds me of that all the time, and I've come to accept that about myself. So let's be nerds together. Read the book. Let's have a chat with it. Who knows? Maybe this author whose name I forget. Maybe we can have him visit the shop sometime. Now, of course, with an axe, one of the hardships, I'm going to shift this around here just a little bit. In putting it on the anvil, if I lay it on the anvil because of the shape of it, kind of a bloated triangle, we'll say, it's never going to lay really nice on the anvil. So I had to forge this little guy, just a slightly radius little triangle, so I can put this on here, and I'm going to be able to put my mark in, and hopefully the piece will lay really nice, and I can find that straight line that will drive the tool into its mark. So trying to get set up, as a friend of mine says, always be prepared. Touch mark, especially in mild steel, we don't need the material raging hot. So just a decent little above red is going to be fine. Here's a maker's tip. Future me is an idiot. And so what I do is when I put my touch mark on, I don't hold it with my hands. Obviously, you see I put it into the channel locks. In the channel locks, I always make sure, except for once, this is where rules come from, I always make sure that the rounded part of the channel locks is the top of my touch mark. So as we come up close to the camera there, JB with the umbrella and the raindrops on the top. So that way, when I've got hot steel, I'm going to put it on there. I know right away, this is the way that I need to hold it. I'm not guessing. It's all ready to go because future me is an idiot. Trademark, registered, whatever. That's my joke. So don't steal it. Of course, I'm putting it out there for you guys. So, all right. So the other thing that I have to do with the axe is I have to put the drift in there, because if I try and smack without the drift in, the force obviously will get concentrated on one cheek, and then we got a collapsed cheek, and we're back to square one. So that same drift that I used for sizing the eye just a little bit, we're now going to put back in, put the touch mark in. Up and running. I don't need it super hot. You can see it slid right down in there. This just barely has a glow to it at all at this point, and that's just fine. That's right where I want it to be. I'm going to put this a little more towards the back. You only ever really get one pop when you're using a punch. If you try and do it a multiple of times, usually you get a lot of shadowing, not that much, not that fun. So it's on the smaller side. Woohoo! Put it right in front of my eye. So there it is, Umbrella Forge. Works out just fine. So this next step is I've got another drift here that is extra. It's extra wide. The front to back is about the same, but it expands sideways more. And I like to do that just to open up and get a really nice hourglass shape out of my eyes. So we're back up to a decent temperature. Blue flame running. That's a good fuel ratio. You guys are obviously tuning in, seeing my career and my passion here. And if you watch from the front, you heard me, or from the beginning, you heard me go off on axes and making and stuff like that. What's your passion? What's something that gets you going? I have some friends who are really passionate about tea, and can really teach me a lot about tea. So that's one of the cool things about the world that we live in today. You can share your passions with people. So take a moment, either here on Instagram, or this is going to get shared on Facebook or on YouTube, for my Umbrella Forge. Interact. I will do the best that I can to read and respond to comments that are in there. Not going to promise that I'm going to read all of them. That was the first rule that I was told, is don't read the comments, and it's worked out really well for me. Okay, we're almost to temperature. I'm going to switch you guys to the swedge block. Yeah. Axes are just something. I think everybody is a fan of an axe. If you're into fantasy games, you're an axe fan because of the Gimli, the dwarf, and all of his axes. Dwarven axes that way. If you're a fan of history, you're into axes. I didn't watch the Acolyte, but what I understand is that some of the Disney Space World, not Disney World, Disney World to Star Wars is trying to bring in different types of lightsabers, and we'll get the fire in, including an axe. They're so iconic, from arguably the oldest tool in human existence. Some people claim the knife, but if you take a sharp rock and you start doing this, that's using it like an axe. So that chopping motion. And you can take an axe and you can slice with it. Some of my carving axes have turned out really nice. So I think axes are just, there's so much more, they've been stuck in the tool. I don't want to say stuck like that's a bad thing, but they're recognized as a tool, which is great. Knives are a tool. Blades in general are a tool. It just depends on the job. But they're also kind of a victim of bad PR. Like, people are talking about battle axes or working axes, and like, no, there's an axe. You know, we do see there is some difference in typology where if I'm looking to fight with it, I can't really use a 3-pound axe for very long. That's a important part about combat, is you're not thinking about just 2 seconds of work, you're thinking about a day. And you're thinking about penetration. You know, how do I want this axe to be able to cross the fibers of the wood, of the grain? So if you're in, let's use Scandinavia for example, and it's more of a coniferous forest environment, softwoods, you can have a larger wedge form that's going to cut and then separate those soft fibers that are going to want to spring back really a lot, just because they're a little spongier. Whereas you're in the Americas and you've got your hardwoods, your hardwood forests, you need a little thinner profile to be able to shear those planes off right away and then still be able to come out. So one of my teaching points on axes is, especially with the double bit axe, people talk about, oh, the Viking and their double bearded axe. Like, oh, no, don't. I hate those. I hate that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have never seen a historical example of a double bit Viking battle axe. If I'm wrong, let me know. You know, give me some resources. Let me do some research. But I have never seen one. We've seen the double bit axe as it starts to show up in the Americas, in Canada, and the United States. And what's really intriguing to me is that historically they're not the same axe on both sides. You have one that's meant for felling and one that's meant for limbing. Or another way to look at it is one that's meant for hardwoods and one that's meant for softwoods. And so there's a design difference in the double bit axe than what one might regularly experience. Certainly if you go to the store today and buy a double bit axe, you get the same axe on both sides, same angle, same thickness, all of that stuff. And it's really kind of a shame because it doesn't honor the heritage of the axe as it should. All right. I just wanted to let that serve as a little time for me to be able to warm up. Let's see, is it still in there? Because I've got my axe shaped. I've got the eye right where I want it, but we got a little extra schmutz, again, technical term in there. So just using that flat wire brush, you know, scrape off a lot of the scale. And we're left with a nice clean looking axe here. Oop, I can hit that eye just a little bit. Pole, sorry. I love that scraped finish. I think that looks great. So that's one of the reasons why I went and did my grinding in between, was that I could end up with a really cool forge finish on this piece. So I'm going to heat the eye up one more time. I'm going to true up the eye in the vise. If everything looks good, I'm actually going to move towards actually quenching it right here live with you guys. And then once I quench it, I'm going to put it into my hotshot oven, and we're going to temper that. And yeah, then we'll start moving on to shaping the handle. Back over to the fire, because it's midweek with the maker and we're working on an axe. I've got some other super secret projects that I'm working on. And by super secret, I mean I tell people all about them. Something like this. Once it gets this little ring on here, that means it's ready for some heat treating time. But that's hopefully keeping some going. Well, someone just commented that's a pretty looking sword. Thank you. I'm working hard on it. It's following some really great geometrical shapes. I'm also it's proof of life as well for people who order things. For as much as I'm trying to do something new here with Midweek with the Maker, I've also got some orders, and I don't want people thinking I'm forgetting their stuff as I'm trying to do something new. I'm trying to roll it all in. I'll be honest with you, as a maker, it can get really lonely. So this is one way, to build I guess we'll say a little bit of accountability, but it's also so I can interact with somebody at least to a certain degree. Here we are. Whew, a little crispy. Don't ever just pick it up. Always assume everything in a blacksmith shop is hot, sharp, and trying to kill you. Alright. So here's our axe. Ooh, that looks good. There's a very scientific way that we check to see that everything is square. We put it in the vise, and then you look down at it. And that is so well within the realm. What you want to be careful of is not to over tighten it, because this is a different type of drift that I put in. And that other drift doesn't match the swell from that other shaping one. So when I put it in the vise, it's very light pressure, just so that I can hold it as I twist. All right, one more scrape here, and then I think we're ready to start doing getting ready to quench it. I'm gonna let that get actually kind of hot. So as I mentioned in my first Midweek with a Maker, I was kind of inspired to do this by another maker and mutual friends of ours who does throw and yap. So if you go on YouTube and look up throw and yap, you'll see who I'm talking about. And I thought that's really cool. But obviously throw in the maker world has to do with being a potter or ceramicist or something like that. It's a little bit safer than being a blacksmith and trying to talk about things. If I put my hand in the wrong spot, it's not just a project that's kind of wasted. It doesn't take much, and I could end up going to the hospital. And of course, I work by myself. So, there. One more round of that. So, yeah, I work by myself. So if I really hurt myself, we're in big trouble. So try not to do that and make any of you complicit in that. So I was talking for a little bit, and it got a little crispy on one side. So I'm just trying to scrape all that off, so that I still end up with a nice forge finish. And there it went. Nice forge finish without any bizarro surface texture. I want the surface texture to all be very purposeful on this. And I'm sorry if you couldn't see that, but so there it is. We're going to get a little oxidizing, which is fine. We kind of expected that. But we got a nice looking axe shape here. So in the axe making process, especially my way with that forge welded bit, sorry, I'm listening to Homestar Runner and it came through. With that forge weld, we want to relax some of those pressures. So a little bit of heat and let it cool down, and then a little heat and then let it cool down. This is actually really good for the axe, certainly for that weld seam. So we're going to heat it up. I've actually had a number of forging cycles since I first forge welded it, so I'm not all that worried about it. Just make sure that it's a nice, good flame. The blue flame out of on a coal forge is exactly what we're looking for. When we see this yellowish, grayish smoke on there, that's sulfur coming off, or historically that would actually be called brimstone. Yeah, so you got fire and brimstone right here. That's exactly where that phrase comes from. Here's my oil. Again, steel container with a steel lid, so that if something goes horribly wrong, we throw the lid on and smother the flame. So here's a nice color there. Actually, we're just going to set it right here. Trying to make it aesthetically pleasing for you guys. That is not how to do it. Again, try and keep a lid on so that I don't get, my shop environment is pretty dirty, so I keep the lid on so I don't ever get stuff down in there. Oven on it here. So I'm left the fire kind of rolling at this point just to make sure I don't get cold spots in the fire. I don't need this to be so cool that I can touch it. I just need it to cool down a bit, so when I put it back into the fire, I want the fire to be ready to receive the piece. One of the things, I'm probably going to heat it up and then quench this on this next heat, because I'm really confident in the weld and how things are going. I could be wrong. We'll find out later on. But I'm not going to preheat my oil, which is something I do normally do. But it doesn't really need it right now, especially we've had a warm up these last couple days where I'm at. So, so knowing your steel, knowing which oil it prefers, and knowing which oil, what the temperature the oil prefers, is always a really good idea for you to know. I've experimented with this a number of different ways, and so I know where I can bend some rules. I've also spent a long time getting to know this steel and what color it presents at what temperature. So I'm not going to use a laser sensor, or temple sticks is another tool that's an aid for tempering or hardening, and they're pretty neat. They're basically a crayon that burns at a certain temperature. So temple sticks, you can dial in your tempering or your quenching process really well. You can actually get a series of different ones and write on a piece and see as they burn to dial in what your temperature is. Most important thing with the quench is to get an even heat all the way across. So I don't want it to be really bright in one spot and cold on the other, especially when I've got 4 inches to cover for this edge. I want it all to be about that same color, which we're about here. Quick scrub. And just in, boom. Now, you saw a little bit of flame in there. I didn't freak out. I just kept pushing into the fire. That's one of the things with oil. You can't panic. You can't panic in a situation like that. As soon as you do, you're in trouble. So I'm listening, feeling through the tongs to see if there's any kind of tink or a pop as this piece cools down. Yeah, when the flame comes up, the number one thing you got to do is go into the flames. The closer to the fire, the safer you are from danger. Is kind of the idea there. So I'm looking at my seams. Everything looks really good. I can see some good coloring in there. It's still probably too hot for me to touch. Since I do a composite construction with the mild steel and the high carbon steel, I can get away with just quenching the edge. I didn't do it this time, obviously, because of the flame, because the backside, the eye that I had been working on was still warm enough to ignite the gases. So that's why I had to put the whole thing in. But that'll actually reap some benefits later on when it comes time for finishing. it's going to have this really cool patina all over it. So, and this tempering oil is expensive, so I try and keep it over the over the barrel as much as I can. So let's see. I've got a paper towel here so I don't drip over everything. So just lightly blotching. Now, even though, this is something I've found really interesting, even though I have this wrapped in mild steel and a high carbon on the end, or inside, this little splotchiness here, where it's gray and dark, and some of that's just scale, that lets me know that there's some sort of chemical reaction that has happened inside this this solution of the steel. Doesn't necessarily mean that the piece is hardened all the way like I want it to, but it's our first indication that something really good has happened. Yeah, there's a little difference in the coloration that there's no way you guys are going to see through this camera orientation. So, but it's getting cool enough that I can hold it by my hands, at least with the cloth. So here we are. You can see my umbrella forge right there. That's my mark. Here's a little user axe that we've been making during Midweek with a Maker. So right now is a really boring part where I'm going to put this into the oven and it's going to temper. It's going to temper really well because I'm using hot shot ovens and I'm able to dial my temperatures in just where I want them. So give them a look-see. See if that's something that might help you, whether you're a blacksmith, a ceramicist, glass makers. We're really getting in on them as well. So they're nice people. They'll be glad to help you out. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring about an end to this week's Midweek with a Maker. It's been about an hour, you guys hanging out with me. So thanks for joining. Here's the axe, and we'll start working on our next processes next week. So thanks for coming by. Again, check me out on Instagram. This video, the whole thing will be on Facebook as well. Missing steps on YouTube, and I'll try and cross-post this and see if I can't grow that as well. So give me a like and a follow over there. All right, guys. Take care.